just very quickly, we're gonna talk about the fire decks. The discussion, I don't know how seriously I want to take the discussion, but it has sparked at least some sort of discussion, because the discussion starts with a meme, right? And I don't know if Farfa is still here, but it starts with a meme that Farfa tweeted yesterday, and that's been out for a couple days, which is basically people are calling me a hypocrite in all different shapes or forms. It was even included in one of my latest YouTube videos where it was just circular instead of block dragon, you know, which the Farfa meme is particularly bad because block dragon isn't even a 1-card combo, you know, which is probably half of the comments is telling Farfa that block dragon is actually not a 1-card combo. The original meme had circular on it, and that obviously makes more sense. The background to this is obviously that, you know, I've been known in the past for criticizing decks like Mathmech, decks like Plants, decks like Super Heavy Samurai for, you know, for their linear 1-card combo, auto win the game sort of playstyle. And now I've actually been enjoying or looking forward to the fire format, right? And I don't know, I don't know how serious I need to take these sort of, you know, oh, you're a hypocrite kind of thing, but I still wanted to it's probably not that serious to begin with. It's probably not that serious, but I still wanted to touch upon that topic real quick because I also think it makes for a very interesting discussion. Because even though it might just be memes that don't really matter that much, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I still wanted to at least throw out my opinion on why there's at least there's some differences. There is some differences between, you know, what the fire decks do now and what I criticized in decks like Mathmech, Super Heavy Samurai, Plants, Adamantipator too, for that matter, right? In general, I'm trying to think on how I start with this. So the reason. We're going to talk about 1-card combos in a second, but the reason why I did not like decks like Plants or Super Heavy Samurai was not particularly because they are operating off of 1 card. That is genuinely not the reason why I was so concerned about them. It was more so the board that they ended on. Because I think there's one key difference that you need to understand between what the current Snake Eye decks do and what those decks do, is that when a Plant player or a Super Heavy Samurai player pulls off their combo, the game ends. The game is over if a Super Heavy Samurai player pulls off the full combo, barring any completely broken hard counters to the board. Like, of course, you can find an argument of like, yeah, but if you draw like Dark Ruler plus evenly, then you're good. Like, in general, the goal of these decks is to end the game on turn 1. They pull off their combo and there's nothing your opponent can do about it. The game just ends right then and there, right? That is the first key difference, because if you're actually looking at the fire deck, it doesn't actually do that. The form of interaction that the fire deck presents is actually, it's quite interactive. It opens for your, it's not like, okay, I'm gonna negate everything you do, this and that. You know, you actually have ways to interact with the fire deck. And this discussion is completely detached from power level. Because don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to tell you that the fire deck is not incredibly powerful. The fire deck is incredibly powerful, and it's going to revolutionize like the format. Like modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's going to heavily be dictated by the fire deck. Like the different versions of the fire decks are going to run the upcoming format, right? But power level was never the issue. The power level was never the main focus of my argumentation, because if you notice, the decks that I've criticized were never necessarily the best decks in the format. It's never necessarily been like Plants, Mathmech, or Super Heavy Samurai are the most recent examples, or even also Manadium. You guys know I also don't like Manadium. None of those decks I've actually found to be too powerful. They've not been running the meta. They've never been like so powerful that you needed to play them, right? It's always more about how they play, right? They were viable, but they weren't the best in the same way that the fire decks are, right? It's just the fact that I didn't like what their end board was trying to do, right? Super Heavy was arguably very close because it was only around for a couple weeks though, so it's hard to make a like decisive argument on it. But it's more so that, and this is, once again, this is very, very subjective. This is my opinion, right? My opinion is that good Yu-Gi-Oh is being played when interaction is being had. I think that's what I want to get across. That's my opinion on why I don't, that's my argumentation for why I didn't like those decks, and why I also don't like something like Floodgates most of the time, is I simply think there's obviously more nuance to it, but for the most part, I enjoy interaction in Yu-Gi-Oh! In all shapes or form. I enjoy interaction, and the fire deck does not stop you from interacting with it. And it's more so, I'm comparing the fire deck. I think a better comparison to make with the fire deck is Tearlaments, right? And because both decks are by far the best deck in the format of their respective times, right? I mean, you look at tier 0 Ishizu Tearlament format, like that deck was by far the best deck, and if you didn't play that deck, you were usually at a disadvantage. The fire deck is going to create a very similar sort of dynamic. It doesn't play the same way as Ishizu tier. It's not, the deck itself is not that comparable, but the environment that they create is similar. They are a lot stronger than everything else in the game right now. And so we're looking at a format where you're gonna have to play that deck if you want to be playing the best deck in the format. It's not going to be as diverse, and you're not going to have as many options. And it's completely reasonable. I just want to get that out. It's completely reasonable to not like tier 0 formats for that reason, because you're forced into one deck and you don't like being forced into one deck. That's completely okay. It's reasonable. It's reasonable to not like the fire deck for that reason, right? Because it's going to be a dominant slash tier 0, whatever you want to call it, you know, deck, right? Completely fine to have that opinion. And I think for that reason as well, I think it would be better if the fire format doesn't last like super long, because I think the community being priced out of the best deck for a long time would not be very healthy for the game overall, right? But that's a whole different argument. I feel like it's a whole different argument than criticizing the gameplay itself, because I feel like the gameplay itself, we've played fire mirror matches literally yesterday, and all of them were super fun. Now imagine if we sat down and we played plant mirror matches, we played super heavy samurai mirror matches, we played Adamancipator mirror matches, those kind of things. And I feel like it's hard. I don't even know why I have to make this argument that would feel different, right? I don't know why I have to even defend the argument that those are completely two separate things to compare to each other. Like, it's like, yeah, I don't even know what to say at this point. I don't even know what to say at this point other than you need to look behind the obvious, like, yeah, the deck is powerful, but what does it aim to achieve, right? And I think it's fair to have the first impression that the fire deck is incredibly oppressive, right? Because if you're playing I'm gonna be honest with you, if you're playing a rogue deck and the fire deck goes first and pulls off its combos, it's gonna feel very oppressive, right? It's gonna feel very oppressive because if you're playing a rogue deck, I'm gonna be honest with you, it probably doesn't make a huge difference whether you're facing down a Fire King full combo board or a I don't know, Manadium full combo board, right? Because your rogue deck is probably not going to be able to break either, right? And so the fire deck does force you to play a more powerful deck to keep up with it, because it's lifting the power level in the game right now. It is lifting the power level in the game right now by a significant margin, and if you're not willing to keep up with that because you're sticking with your old deck, right, for whatever reason, you know, maybe you don't want to play a new deck, maybe you can't afford one of the new decks, whatever, like, you're gonna be in trouble in terms of power level. But it's not because the fire deck doesn't allow for interaction per se, right? The deck, the most common version of the deck, which is using the Fire King cards, does not end on a single Omni Negate. And literally half of its interaction gets taken out by like a card like Soul Release. So in terms of its core gameplay, I think the fire deck is actually quite interesting. I actually find it quite interesting. Now, the whole issue of one card combos in Yu-Gi-Oh is a whole different thingy. Once again, I have in the past obviously I've argued that certain one card combos are not healthy for the game. Once again, I think it's a matter of one card combos are a reality for Yu-Gi-Oh for like a long time now. Like there's always been decks with one card combos in them. You know, you look at something like even the quote unquote mid-rangey decks have one card combos these days. You look at like Tour Guide in Unchained last format, for example. I think it's always just a matter of what is the deck trying to do. I don't care how the deck gets to its end board. I don't really care if you do it with one card, or if you do it with two, or if you do it with some other form of interaction. As long as your end board is fine. As long as your end board is fine, then I'm fine with it. And so that's usually what I was arguing against, is that the stuff that these decks were trying to do was just toxic. And there's also another issue and another argument that I want to bring up when it comes to one card combos, and that is that I feel like a one card combo is really problematic when it plays through cards like Valor, Imperm, or Ash. Like the general hand traps that you're seeing a lot right now, if those cards don't stop a one card combo, then I think something is wrong. This is where specifically I'm looking at Mathmech Circular, because one thing that the fire deck is genuinely weak to is hand traps. The fire deck, if you play a rogue deck and you want to beat the fire deck, if you play a deck that can fit enough hand traps, like the amount of times in testing that I just pass for like against one or two hand traps is incredible. It's a lot. Like it's a lot of times that I just pass to one or two hand traps. Mathmech doesn't do that shit. Mathmech does not pass to an Imperma Valor or an Ash Blossom. Like if they draw Circular, they play through all that shit. They play through all. They don't even care about draw if they hard open the Circular. They end on the full board almost if you hit them with like one. You still die. Like literally, if they stop you with hand traps, you pass and you have like a Valor in hand, they have Circular, you're dead. And so that was a particular issue that I had with Mathmech, is that it wasn't even possible to really stop it in any realistic shape or form, which was, to be honest, more of a Cyber's problem than a Circular problem in general. Like it was mostly the fact that Cyber's extra deck tools are completely outrageous. Like even if you stop the Mathmech portion, like you stop them from getting super factorial, like if it was okay, if I could stop the Circular searching super factorial and they wouldn't still be able to freaking, like, I don't know, go all the way up into terahertz and all that, I would maybe be okay with Mathmech. But the fact that the Cyber's extra deck just lets them do whatever the fuck they want as long as they get two bodies onto the board, then you know, that's what I had an issue with mostly. One Bestial is usually enough though. Yeah, have fun main decking Bestials. Like it's a very Bestials are good cards, but they are very targeted, you know, very targeted sort of interactions. But in general, the existence of counters has never been an argument for certain cards, right? The existence of Ash Blossom does not justify Maxi. The existence of Joel and Lockbird does not justify Super Heavy Samurai. The existence of a Bestial that does not justify Mathmech, right? You have to look at these things as like What is the gameplay that these decks try to provide, right? What is it that this deck brings to the table if you're looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! In the grand scheme of things, right? Super Heavy Samurai tries to auto-win the game on turn 1. Bad for the game, period. Manadium tries to win the game on the spot on turn 1. Bad for the game, period. Block Dragon Adamantine Pater decks tried to win the game on turn 1 on the spot, period. Mathmech tries to win the game on turn 1 every single time, period. The Mathmech board might look different from a full power Adamantipator or Manadium board. It's not. The freaking trap sends like 2 or 3 cards away for your opponent and is an Omni-Negate. Plus they have a Terahertz or whatever. Like the game is over. The game is over if Mathmech pulls off the combo, right? Or you just straight up die if they have a battle phase. Like the goal is never to play more than 1 turn if you're playing Mathmech. Plants, same thing. Plants, same thing. The goal is make a board, have your opponent scoop to it every single time, right? And I feel like I've made this point often enough now that is the core gameplay that I don't enjoy, right? The ones where you play your first turn and then your opponent just has no choice but to pack it up. But yeah. Mathmech board is less oppressive than Fire King Snake Eye. If you think that, if you actually think that, and I don't mean to actually be mean, that might actually be an issue of you don't understand what's going on in the current Yu-Gi-Oh format. That it's actually a it might just be a, in the most neutral way of saying it, it might genuinely be a skill issue. The Fire King Snake Eye board is not even close to the level of oppression that Mathmech did. They might look the same to you, but they're not. They are not. Like it's so much more interactive to play against Fire King Snake Eye if you're playing a powerful deck yourself. And I don't mean this to insult, actually. I genuinely don't mean to, because I think that is a genuine issue that people have. People look at the thing that Fire King does, and they think it's unbeatable. They think it's unbeatable. They think you can't maneuver through it. There's no way you're beating it. They just get overwhelmed by the amount of things that it puts up. And it does put up a lot. And it's a very powerful deck. And it's completely fine to not like the fact that it's the most powerful deck in the game right now. Right? The thing that you have to understand is that you need to be playing at the same power level that they operate at. Because that's always been a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! The power level has been rising, but that has never necessarily stopped Yu-Gi-Oh! Games from being good Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. The only thing that matters for that allows games to be good is that they are being played at roughly the same power level, right? If one deck is here and one deck is here in terms of power level, then it's not possible to play good Yu-Gi-Oh! Because this deck is just going to win so much more often based off its power level. It doesn't matter what this guy does. As long as the other deck is operating at this power level, you're losing, right? And so if a new deck is, if the fire deck's power level is up here and there's no other deck that is close, you have to play a fire deck to experience good gameplay against it, which is another issue. Don't get me wrong, that is an issue of tier 0 formats that people take, that people don't like, you know, which is okay. I'm not arguing against that. That is not the point I'm trying to make right now. Why is my man triggered by a couple dumb memes? I'm not actually triggered. I think it's a good discussion. I'm not triggered at all. I just want to get my point across, and I do enjoy having these discussions right now. I don't know if I'm seeming like I'm upset or anything like that. I am not. I literally included one of these memes in one of my recent videos. Like, it's completely okay to me to, it's just a I think it's interesting to talk about this sort of thing, right? I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I'm sorry if it's all over the place because there's a lot of things to talk about, is that power level itself in a deck does not indicate whether it's good or bad Yu-Gi-Oh! That's being played. Because you can play incredibly bad Yu-Gi-Oh! At low power levels, which is what decks like you know, decks like Mathmech or Plants did, right? Because they actually were not that powerful. They were not format defining. They were viable decks, but they were not the most powerful. They did not change the way we look at Yu-Gi-Oh's power level. They did not lift it. They just existed somewhere in the realm of like reasonably playable decks, right? But they still provided bad gameplay, right? And so the quality of gameplay does not necessarily have something to do with the power level of the decks, right? And you can have, like I said, you can have bad or good gameplay at low power levels. You can have bad or good gameplay at high power levels, right? We've had formats where the power level was super high and the gameplay was super bad as well. Like I'm thinking like Goki mirror matches, Spiral mirror matches, those kind of things were more like they were like tier 0, lifting the power level of the game, but still didn't provide good, you know, mirror matches. Like they weren't good formats. And we can also have very high power level formats with good gameplay, like Tearlaments, and I think like Fire King, right? That is the point I'm trying to make. Now, if you want to hate Fire King because it's lifting the power level of the game and forces you to play more powerful decks to keep up with it, which in turn means you kind of have to play Fire King yourself, that's fair. But if you're comparing it to something like Plants or Vanadium or Adamancipator or Mathmech, you're missing the point, is what I'm trying to say, right? And that's my TED Talk. That's my probably way too serious response to just a couple memes that people make. But I thought it was an interesting discussion to bring up. What do you think of towers then? Well, I think in general, I just like interaction. Everything that promotes interaction is cool with me, and everything that doesn't, I don't like. So I'm not a huge fan of floodgates. I'm not a huge fan of auto win boards, and I'm also not a huge fan of unoutable towers that your opponent either has an out for, or they can't win. Basically, that's all. That's literally my take. Whether you agree with that or not is up to you. Whether you think a Fire King end board that has 0 Omni Negates and ends on, like, I don't know, a Flamberge, an Amblo Whale, and an IP Masquerena in the Spell and Trap Zone is too oppressive to play through, that's up to you. I personally don't think it is. It's very powerful, but it's not oppressive, and that's okay in my book. Now, the whole pricing issue and the whole you have to play a fire deck if you want to compete, those are issues, but they are separate from this discussion. So that's a discussion for another day. That's also been had a bunch of times. So Mathmech also ended on 2 pieces of interactions. It's not about counting T interactions. If I set summon limit and I pass, are you telling me I'm ending on 1 piece of interaction? Like, how are we just counting them as if they are similar? How is... Okay, so you're saying IP Masquerena being 1 interaction is the same as ending on Super Factorial, which sends a card from the field, a card from the Spell and Trap Zone, a card from the hand, and is an Omni Negate? You're like, that's... no, I'm giving up. I'm giving up. It's fine. Whatever, dude. Whatever. Enjoy your Mathmech is fine copium while Circular is banned. Enjoy. I'm not gonna get one guide by that anymore. Like, that's outrageous. Dude, SP is a great example, because SP is an incredibly powerful card, but I love SP. Like, SP back and forth games are so freaking cool. The fact that it's expensive, it sucks. The fact that it and I'm not denying the fact that it's incredibly powerful, but the SP gameplay is so fun. It's genuinely, usually it's not about, I'm not trying to convince you guys. If you wanna hate on Snake Eyes, go ahead. I'm not gonna try and stop you. It's at the end of the day, what you like and what you don't like is very subjective. I'm just trying to present a different perspective, and maybe it helps to look at things from other perspectives.